This What's Working with Cam Marston podcast is brought to you courtesy of Michelob Ultra Beer.
They say consistency is the key to success. They weren't wrong. So how about grabbing a beer that's consistently smooth, consistently refreshing, and consistently light? You might just find that the road to success can be pretty enjoyable. Michelob Ultra, the perfect balance of taste and refreshment, and only 2.6 carbs and 95 calories. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Enjoy responsibly. Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
Welcome, everyone, to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is the show designed to bring you the workplace, the workforce, and the marketplace trends shaping the workplace, the workforce, and the marketplace around us. We try to find guests that when I speak to them and they talk about what it is that they do, what they say will give us some ideas of things that we can apply to our own business, our own lives, our own family, whatever it may be, and make whatever it is that we do just a little bit better. Make us a little bit better at whatever it is we do. Again, welcome. What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate, housed in the Culverhouse College of Business, all housed at the University of Alabama. Lots of change going on in the show these days. We'll have announcements upcoming in the few weeks of new partnerships that we're developing. Most importantly, I guess, for this show, and a change is perhaps change that you've heard already. We've got some new sponsors, and it's important that I recognize these groups and thank them generously for their sponsorship. We'll begin with the way that they've come on board. I got a call not long ago from Angelo DePaola. He runs the Coastal Connection Realty out of Orange Beach, Alabama. He says, Cam, there may be people in North Alabama who are looking for vacation homes on the coast. And I said, Angelo, I think you're on to something there. And he's came on board. I like the guy. We've met him. You'll hear his advertisements in this show. If you're looking for a beach home, an investment property in the Baldwin County or Destin area, the Panhandle of Florida, Angelo and his team can help you. Again, the Coastal Connection Realty and Angelo DePaola. The second one is United Bank out of Atmore. They've long been a client of my seminar work and started to hear about the way the show is spreading and getting into new markets. And I want to welcome United Bank. They are good people. I've met so many of them. They are service-oriented people, and banking is just what they do. And I love my affiliation with United Bank. So welcome to United Bank. Welcome to the Coastal Connection Realty. Important that you know where to find us on social media. First and foremost, Facebook. That's where we spend most of our time. That's where people our age, frankly, spend most of their time on social media. And you can find Cam Marston on social media. Quickly check us out, follow us, like us, all that kind of stuff. You'll find us on Instagram as well. Keep a small presence on Twitter. It's just so very caustic on Twitter, I guess. And Instagram, Twitter, and what's the other? Oh, LinkedIn. We have a presence on LinkedIn. You'll also find us on TikTok, but I still don't know how to TikTok yet. And let's see. You can find the show on whatsworkingcam.com, where you'll find every one of our shows as podcasts. Go to whatsworkingcam.com. You can subscribe to the show at the many different podcast platforms that we have available for this show at whatsworkingcam.com, and I hope you'll do so. Okay, let's get into it. I was introduced to Buddy and Nikki Cummings not long ago from Buddy Persons. Person Services Corp is also an advertiser on the show. He said, Cam, you need to meet these people, and I did. And what I found were two really intelligent, well-spoken business coaches. Their background is quite impressive. They grew a company from soup to nuts, sold it at my impression is quite a nice fee, and have now begun coaching other businesses. And I've always been somewhat suspicious of these people. However, I can tell you that Buddy and Nikki do it well, and you'll hear that come out in this conversation. If you've wondered ever, can I run my own business? Do I have the what it needs to be an entrepreneur? Or if you are a business owner and you feel stuck, and I've felt this way, and if you feel stuck, What do you need to do to get you moving? What do you need to do to get you unstuck? Well, that's what Buddy and Nikki both specialize in, working with small business to help them grow, to find niches, and to get unstuck. And they've been through the ringer themselves. They speak of this from experience, not theory. And when the interview was complete, this was pre-recorded, I left that going, oh my goodness, that was just a treasure of content. It could have been twice as long. When we come back from break, Buddy and Nikki Cummings, they're business consultants helping small business grow. And I think you're going to enjoy this. You don't have to be small business. These are ideas that apply to anyone leading groups, trying to grow product, trying to grow market share, whatever. You're listening to What's Working. We'll be right back after this break. What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate and the Culverhouse College of Business, all housed at the University of Alabama.
When making the largest investment choice in most families' financial portfolio, you need a realtor who truly understands the market and can negotiate favorable terms and conditions. I'm Angelo DePaola, the Coastal Connection with eXp Realty, the preferred real estate advisor for buying or selling along the Gulf Coast. For full access to the MLS in Mobile, Baldwin County, Pensacola, Destin, or Panama City, just Google Angelo DePaola, the Coastal Connection.
We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate, housed in the Culverhouse College of Business at the University of Alabama. In the studio today, Buddy and Nikki Cummings were introduced to me by an advertiser and a friend. Their business is called Cummings Camp Programs. They're based in Pensacola. And what I learned about them on their website, as well as from my friend, as well as from speaking to Buddy and Nikki prior to our interview, they work with entrepreneurs. And it's one of the conversations this show has never gone into is, who is the entrepreneur? We talk a lot to entrepreneurs, but what does it take to begin? What does it take to continue these types of business? We're going to go into successes and failures of entrepreneurs. First, Buddy and Nikki, thank you for your time. Welcome to What's Working.
Thank you for having us. We're so excited to be here.
I am glad you're here too. You may be the ones that have traveled the furthest for the show thus far, for which I'm grateful. Let's begin by talking about your credibility. You guys had Small Business of the Year in California for a time. You've bought and sold, from what I can tell, at least one, if not more companies. You have a remarkable pedigree to become the coaches that you are. Let's start with you. Ladies first. Nikki, tell us a little bit about your background. Give me some more detail.
Oh, well, thank you. So I guess I would say I was sort of an accidental entrepreneur. I started my first business in high school. I was raised by newspaper publishers. So they were business owners, and they were actually a husband and wife. They were co-publishers, my grandparents. And so I saw husbands and wives doing business together. I did start my first business in high school, my first two businesses actually, and then went into the newspaper publishing business and into advertising, and then ended up feeling the call to come work with my partner in life and in businesses companies. And so Buddy and I have built and sold a couple different companies, different spaces, working in high school sports marketing, working in renewable energy. And I was not a natural leader. I'm a college dropout, full disclosure. And so I had no experience. Everything I learned was, on the job and in the field. But I just learned that if you fall in love with your people, everything else falls into place. All the finance and all the different fundamentals, they can be learned. And I say you can train the skill, but not the will. And I had that grit and that will, and it suited me.
Your story sounds just like all the entrepreneurial stories that come out of California. College dropped out, didn't know what I was going to do. The only thing you haven't mentioned is it started in a garage, which seems to be the California theme for all successful businesses.
I'll let Buddy tell you about the garage.
Okay, there we go. Good. Buddy, over to you.
There is a garage involved in the history. So Buddy Cummings grew up, my father was an entrepreneur, so that's all I'd ever seen as far as work was him owning businesses. And so in high school, I was hooked, started a painting business, and realized that if I would bring my friends, and as long as I could show them a good time, order pizza, I didn't have to pay them. It was just as long as they were engaged in learning something new, they wanted to be there. So I realized quickly, I was like, man, I love being an entrepreneur. This is awesome when the team is motivated. So in college, we had a high school sports fundraising organization, which I didn't realize when I started it, but ultimately was a telemarketing business where we had 30 reps, but literally started in our garage. I would have to drive around in the alleys at night. If you didn't want something in San Diego, you'd put it in the alley, so we would get free desks to start out. And 5 years later, we were number one in that industry. So, and then that allowed us the money to start Whirlwind and Solar, which we knew nothing about electricity. I still, after this day, we were building power plants, but what we were good at is building teams. So we went out to our first job, and I tell people today, our first job, we were torquing the bolts, and we were supposed to be inside the tower, and the customer comes out and like, what are you doing? We thought we were in the right spot, wrong spot. It was embarrassing. I said, hey guys, from here on out, yes sir, no sir, and you hustle everywhere you go. And it was from that, just finding our niche right off the bat. It was the hustle, that hustle and here to serve attitude was what really took us to number one in that industry as well.
Yeah, no kidding. So solar power, we've had people on the show talking about solar power. It's a fascinating industry. We could go down that rabbit hole. What I want to focus on, and I'm reminding myself here, stay focused, Cam, is the nature of the entrepreneur. So you two were both entrepreneurs, still are. And there are people listening right now who are saying, I wonder if I have the chops to start my own business. I wonder if this is smart for me. I wonder if I have what it takes. They're likely frustrated in their current position where they are. They see people that are rewarded and recognized who they feel are inferior for whatever reason. Talk to me, Nikki, let's go back to you. Talk to me about the soul or the outlook of the entrepreneur. Who are they? What do they have in common?
I like to say they're freedom fighters. So every business that Buddy and I have ever been involved in and started or served and supported, it's been for some intention of finding freedom. So whether that, like you were talking about, whether you're frustrated and you want to be your own boss, if you want to have financial freedom, if you want to have the freedom to set your own schedule so you can be home by a certain time for your kids, it's all, or create creative freedom. It's all, I believe that every entrepreneur starts a business seeking freedom. And what often happens very quickly, whether the business is successful or not. But even when the business is really successful, it just becomes all consuming. And Buddy says it'll suck your life, your money, everything out of you, even as it's growing, because it's unemotional. It's just this entity that's growing and demanding. And so all of a sudden you get into business to be a business owner, and then you realize your business owns you. You're not a business owner. You're owned by your company. And so we like to work with our entrepreneurs and Buddy, that's one thing Buddy's always been really good at, is delegating and staying above the weeds, working on the business as opposed to in it. So I believe that entrepreneurs truly at their heart are freedom fighters. Freedom fighters.
I love that. I will quote you twice and then it's mine. That's good content right there. I have no problem stealing a good line. Buddy, you talk about staying above the weeds. Let's talk about the challenges that the entrepreneurs typically face. What are, in your experience, running your own businesses as well as coaching others, what are the more common problems that prevent these entrepreneurs from thriving?
You bet. And so even going back to that first question of if somebody's asking themselves, should I make that jump into being as an entrepreneur? And I think I have a hard time pushing somebody because I feel like it has to be so much of a burden where it overcomes your fears, because the second you jump into that arena, I just want to put respect into the business world. It is a fight, you know what I mean? Especially those first few years where it's coming at you in every direction and it's all new. And so what I see has happened, even happened in my life, is when business owners, we get sucked into that and we finally get to a place in which we're making payroll, we're paying our bills, that we then almost get paralyzed with fear to continue to grow. So we tend to just stay in that cycle of just getting by. We almost forget to put the vision bigger of fighting for our freedom, and just survival becomes the ultimate outcome or goal, even well-intended or not. You're appreciative to be in business.
So if I understand you correctly, many of the entrepreneurs, once they've hit a plateau of success, like I said I was going to do this, and look at this, I'm paying bills, I'm paying my team, I'm making a little bit of money, this is what I set out to do, and here I am, and out of fear, they stop growing. out of fear, they say, this is what I set out to do. If I push too far, this house of cards may fall. Am I right?
That feeling of I could lose everything is very heavy, and it's at that point where good is the enemy of great. And so that's where we're able to come in and say, okay, for you to take that next level, we got to start building the infrastructure and your team to pull back. And there's so many emotional, mental obstacles on that we could touch on, but pulling back is a very necessary, needed thing, but also identity.
Well, define pulling back. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
Well, in the first few years, you're wearing all the hats and taking all the blame. And then at that point, you start to realize, like, okay, I'm only seeing what's in front of me, not where we're going, not where we're headed, being able to put the budgets and the metrics together to have money left over to bring in the salaries that we need to have that visibility where we can hit bigger targets and new areas that we're saving for. That you have the time to build community with your organization so they understand where you're going, why you're going there, and all of a sudden you're not having to do everything all the time.
Yeah, so that holding back, you have to coach them. That's, if I understand you correctly, one of the more common challenges is coaching these leaders, these entrepreneurs. Hey, you can no longer wear every hat. You got to stop. And while you may be good at that, whatever your next level is not going to happen as long as you're wearing every hat. Nikki, am I about right?
So yeah, we call it, and this is not our quote either, but slow down to speed up, right? You have to slow down in order to speed up. And so we get with our clients, and sometimes it's painful and they don't want to do it. They want to keep going back to, I'm a hammer, that's a nail, I'm going to whack it, I'm going to go out into the field, I'm going to literally dig trenches. We've got clients who are digging trenches, but yet they want to scale. And so they have to slow down, remove themselves from the business, go through that strategic planning process, and it's a diagnostic that we take them through, understand where their strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities are, and then develop a custom, business management plan to implement with them.
Buddy and Nikki Cummings are the CEOs of Cummings Camp programs out of Pensacola. However, my impression is you work anywhere. What I saw on your website is it's a lot of electronic stuff, a lot of Zoom calls, etc. There's no limit to the work that you do. They're now business consultants helping entrepreneurs become unstuck and getting them to the next level. Their history is quite successful of buying and selling businesses themselves. They've done quite a good job. And when we come back from break, I want to talk to you a little bit about the entrepreneur who comes to you, who realizes, I need help. And if there has been a moment that has made them realize, okay, something's got to give, and that's when your phone rings. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. It's brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate at the Culverhouse College of Business, all housed at the University of Alabama.
They say consistency is the key to success. They weren't wrong. So how about grabbing a beer that's consistently smooth, consistently refreshing, and consistently light? You might just find that the road to success can be pretty enjoyable. Michelob Ultra, the perfect balance of taste and refreshment, and only 2.6 carbs and 95 calories. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Enjoy responsibly. Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
We're back. You're listening to What's Working. In the studio, Buddy and Nikki Cummings, co-founders of Cummings Camp Programs, started their own businesses, Small Business of the Year in California years ago. We're talking about the challenges of an entrepreneur, and during the break, Nikki offered to read a text that just came over that I think may sum up what we're about to get into. Nikki?
Yeah, absolutely. So like Buddy was talking about earlier in the episode that, you get so busy and then you get comfortable. You're just trying to pay your bills. And as soon as you can start to pay your bills, like, okay, you forget to think, well, what about profit sharing? What about goal setting? What about strategy and scale? And so you just, you kind of get consumed in the day to day. And I have a client who reached out to me and she just said, it's a husband and wife business. I was speaking to my husband about working with Cummings Camp. He's reluctant and he's not sure what it's all about. Plus, he's not really sure what the problem is, in quotations. So he doesn't even know where to begin or where to ask for help. They sat down on Saturday, they went through their QuickBooks, and they pulled up a P&L. We're in the red. He didn't trust the numbers, but I do. So we're going to go into them deeper. Bottom line, we aren't making as much money as we should be. And the other issue, as I mentioned, is hiring people. And then, there's a whole conversation about them wanting our information. But so often what we find when we're working with our clients, and Buddy and I, we've been in a season where we've done the same thing. I don't even want to know, right? Because if I don't know how bad it is, I don't have to deal with it. I can just keep putting one foot in front of the other and stay really busy with the busy work. And so many of our clients don't have budgets. They don't have P&Ls. They don't have cash flow. They don't have a strategy, but they're not alone. It is completely normal. We have clients who are doing over $5 million a year in gross revenue, sometimes $10 million, and they don't have budgets and they don't have monthly financials. We go in and we teach them how to do that.
I tell you, it's a terrifying part of business. And as a small business owner myself, I am incredibly reliant upon QuickBooks to keep my checkbooks balanced. But there are some buttons on QuickBooks that I know if I hit them, it's going to spit out a report that I don't want to see. And it may be a glorious outcome. It may not be, but it's that fear of it may not be that makes me say, all right, I'm going to look at this next week. Next week, I'll be braced for it then. So the question prior to the break was what causes these entrepreneurs to call? And you gave me a great example of we should be making more money. In fact, in the example you just gave, they're in the red. We should be making money instead of losing money. What else? What else is that challenge, Buddy? Why do you get called?
It makes me love what I do because I can see the business owner get to a wall, and I've been there where they can't work any harder. Right? They're giving all they can. They pushed in, and now they're at a dangerous place because they're big enough where the numbers start to get kind of scary. If you get slow paid and don't get money in, the payroll still comes, and they know their business has potential. They know they have potential, but it's one of those situations they don't have the know-how or the systems to say, okay, how do I get my team to be engaged? How do I get them excited to want to build the business? How do I pull back so I can spend time on seeing what's next, and keeping them excited about growing and building? So they hit a wall and they don't know what's next. And that's what the beauty of it is come in because there's that particular step in which we're able to give them, all of a sudden, they get their life back. And it's a freedom factor because the more freedom they get, the more their employees able to grab on. And you see the employees start to get engaged and start to care, and they understand what they're doing. They have the tools to do it. So they go home feeling better, like they have a purpose, they have a future in the organization, and the owner gets the freedom. So it really starts to build on itself in a beautiful way.
So people get unstuck. You help them get unstuck. And it sounds like one of the most common themes is to pull them away from the minutia of the business, which they're good at. And everybody likes to check a box on a to-do list and say, look at how productive I was today. Regardless of whether that's what you should be doing, we like to check those boxes. So they get unstuck. What is the first element of focus after that? Build the team, build the market. Where is the second struggle point of most of these small businesses? Nikki?
So what we typically do when we start working with a new client, and sometimes we don't just work with the business owner themselves, but we often are working with their entire executive team. And so, but what we do is we go through that diagnostic process and diagnose what is going on. So sometimes it's, we have one client, he just doesn't have a sales strategy. He has a great model and he has so much opportunity in his industry, but he had no sales strategy. So he'll have a really big month on accident, but he's so consumed with fulfilling the orders that he forgets to then keep building the pipeline.
Sure.
And so once we go through that diagnostic process, we're able to identify what areas, because there's fundamentals about running your business, but each business is unique. And so we sort of score where they are in these different areas relating to your culture and your vision, your finances, and which are also your metrics and, that you track and that you hold your people accountable to, and then also your sales and marketing. So once we go through that, then we help them develop that plan based on, the areas with the biggest opportunities, I like to call it. And we help them launch the plan, implement it into their company. And sometimes, just depending on the model, we do it for, a fee, or we do it for an equity relationship. It just kind of depends on the client and, their needs and what we're looking for.
What you're looking for. Sure. So you help them with a sales model. And it sounds, you haven't mentioned this word, personality driven. These small businesses can be very personality driven. Mm-hmm. Let's take the client whose text you read a moment ago. Perhaps they are a extraordinarily gregarious person and People like to be around them, and it drives their business. At what point do you try to get personality out of business and business fundamentals as the overriding theme? Or do you look at it and say, hey, this business has a real personality to it. These people we need to enhance this. Buddy, what do you think?
Absolutely. And I think that's actually the key to the system is giving the employees something to fight for, and trying to understand from the owner, what does done look like in 3 years for them financially, and then build the story around that to where the team then wants to fight to get there. Right. And then you build that career path where they know they're fighting to get there, but they see success along the way. And that helps with your recruiting, hiring, and training, and then you go through, because your finances are at the end of the day all about giving them the tools and the visibility so they understand it's not emotional. Your targets aren't based on, because I've done it for years where I show up and I get irritated. I'll hear something, I'll get mad, and I'll change what's important. But it's giving them solid and consistent metrics to then know what winning looks like, right? And then they just follow up on a weekly basis of keeping everybody excited, focused, and wanting to fight the good fight for the organization.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Nikki.
Well, I was just say, Buddy and I are big on personality because it's who your culture is. It's what your culture is. So we call it like identifying your freak flag and then flying it high. Mm-hmm. So we do, we train a lot of folks, and we do a lot of, stuff on YouTube and LinkedIn as well. But we say, this isn't your father's company, right? This is you don't have to put on a uniform or, like a costume to go be a businessman in your business, right? Like decide who you are, build your clubhouse. Some people say, don't hire a bunch of like-minded people. We disagree. We hired people who we loved to be around and who valued the same characteristics and values that we did. And then we learned how to build wind farms from that. And so I think a personality is a big part of it, but then identifying, like we said, that diagnosis, and then going in, even if you're not a bean counter, hire great bean counters, right? It's okay. You don't have to be everything to everyone. And that's kind of where we come in and we support them building that structure, but we want them to be confident, to be themselves, and, build something unique that's unique to them.
Do you ever look at a business and their market and say, you know what? You've got great ambition, you've got great tools, but there's not a market for what you're trying to sell. Or maybe you'll sell 2 of them and you just simply can't keep the lights on with that. Do you ever look at them and say, I admire your ambition and your goals, but there's just not a market for this that's going to make you even not wealthy, but even profitable? That's a tough message to have to give. Do you get into that situation? Or is it most of the businesses that you're coaching know that there's a market out there, they've got evidence of it, and it's not a part of the equation?
So yes, I have had that conversation, and it is tough because it becomes their identity, their product, and so they don't want to deviate. But I would also suggest that just getting in the game and then finding what's the next move. That I think all businesses very rarely end up doing what they initially started at doing. So it's being vulnerable, having that visibility to finding out where the demand is. I mean, you're already in the game. Now you got to find a way to win.
That's an interesting comment. That's a really interesting comment, is that most businesses end up being something different than what you started. So there's somebody listening right now who says, I'm going to open a blank shop, but I need to go in aware that in a year, in 2 years, it may be something different, and I got to be good with that, which means goal setting has to be very flexible. Let's talk about that when we get back.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. This is kind of interesting to me. I'm sorry that we only have 3 segments to discuss this. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate at the Culverhouse College of Business at the University of Alabama. In the studio, Buddy and Nikki Cummings. Their company is Cummings Camp Programs. They're business coaches with a heck of a background to support them. We'll be right back.
Is paying a real estate agent worth the money? I'm Angelo DePaola, the Coastal Connection with eXp Realty. Great real estate agents are like the best doctors. They listen deeply, make your goals their own, stay current on trends that impact your decisions, and have experience navigating unexpected situations. We help our clients make the best real estate decisions along the Gulf Coast. Google me, Angelo DePaola, the Coastal Connection.
Customer service never goes out of style. In fact, I think it's safe to say that customer service is more valuable and more important now more than ever. Hi, this is Cam Marston. One thing that my over 200 episodes of What's Working has taught me is how important customer service is to building and maintaining a thriving business. It's the growing need for customer service that's led me to partner with one of the state's leading customer service trainers to create our program called Delivering 5-Star Customer Service. Your team will get one 90-minute training session per month for 6 consecutive months. Each session builds on the skills learned the previous month, allowing your customer-facing teams to practice before moving on to the next lesson. And the 6 lessons address everything from appearance to electronic communications to conflict resolution to maintaining a service mindset. Our program travels and is delivered in person at your workplace, nothing virtual. You simply can't practice the level of the skills this course teaches virtually. For more information, email me, cam@cammarston.com, and let's schedule a time to talk. Remember, you have less to fear from outside competition than you do from discourtesy and bad service from inside your own company. Again, email me, cam@cammarston.com, and let's talk about your business. We're back. You're listening to What's Working. Buddy and Nikki Cummings are in the studio with me today. Company is Cummings Camp Programs. They're business coaches. And What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate, the Culverhouse College of Business at the University of Alabama. Prior to the break, you said something that really caught my attention. The very few of the businesses that go in with a plan, this is my words, that go in with a plan of what they want to do, end up doing that. In fact, their greatest profitability is usually, if I understood you correctly, after a pivot to survive. Am I correct there?
100%. And I think what you asked about budgeting on that concept of a plan, and we always say we write the where we're going in pen and how we're going to get there in pencil.
Yes.
I'll quote you twice and then it's mine. Another good one.
And the reason why that became so much of our DNA is that the second you set a goal, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to get punched in the face, and all of a sudden you lose a big client, something shifts and something doesn't work out. Right? And your whole team wants to say like, well, we don't have to hit the goal anymore then. And you're like, no, we still have to get there. We just got to get creative. You know what I mean? And that becomes the DNA.
Go ahead, Nikki.
In our last industry, we were a very small fish in a huge corporate pond in the beginning. And I was nervous about that. But then what we found was we were nimble and we were able to be quick and flow with what our clients needed. Whereas the bigger competitors, they had too much bureaucracy, too much red tape, too many steps to get things approved. And so, like Buddy said, very quickly, what we thought we got into the business to do, we started offering different services, and just that flexibility and nimbleness as a small mom and pop shop enabled us to grow with our clients and was part of our success. What I started out being insecure about ended up being part of our secret sauce.
So what you're saying is you set a goal, you declare what you're in business to do, but you've got to be in the back of your mind saying, all right, what is a new opportunity may show up, or a new way that we've got to survive may show up. Can you give me a story about how this happened? Tell me this, because I know there are people out there that are listening that says they say I've had this business and it intends to do this. It's not going the way I'd hoped it would. What do I need to listen for? The business owner is saying, to determine that there may be a pivot that I could make that would be very lucrative.
So there was a couple things that we would laugh and say, either A, we're hunting elephants, eating squirrels. Yes is the answer.
Oh my gosh, I need to be writing these things down. It's so good.
Yes is the answer. What's the question?
Right.
So it was one of those things. We were literally, there was a transition in our industry. One year we were building wiring power plants back to the substation, but after the shift, it got slow, and we were putting in cattle guards for some of our customers. They asked if we needed help, and that was what they needed, and we said yes. And
so power plants to cattle guards all under the same time, but it was, hey, that's what we can do. It was an affirmative answer to the customer's question.
Absolutely. And it's back to the culture that you're creating within your organization, where no matter what it takes, not succeeding, not hitting our numbers is not an option. So you shed everything that your egos and you at the door, and we're going to do whatever it takes, right? And it almost breeds that freak flag that Nikki spoke of, like your culture becomes not for everybody.
Tell me more about that. Let's talk a little bit about the team, the importance of the right people on the bus, as that expression has been. When you realize that the culture isn't for everybody, when you realize there's somebody on the team who still wants to use your example, only wire power plants and has no interest in cattle guards, what's that conversation like?
So, I'm assuming a lot of us will go through this identity where we try to be somebody else. We want to be the bigger company, and you want to be somebody that you see is successful. But all of a sudden, when you start to realize that's not what people want, they want to be a part of some unique special sauce group that has some craziness to them.
Right.
And so the second you say, like, hey, this is the type of people, this is not for everybody, you call it out. We are unique here. We are special. We're crazy. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, then your team starts to regurgitate back to you. He's not one of us, right? He's used to that big corporate culture, and they start to self-police and realize, like, no, they get pride in being unique.
Yeah.
So as you have that culture that you're building and you implement a spirit of accountability. So that's one of the things that we train on. We do workshops. We're actually doing one at EntreCon in Pensacola in November for the SCI group. We teach workshops on accountability. And basically you can have people think, you hear the word accountability and you kind of cringe, like, I don't want to be accountable. What does that mean? And we have found that you can have an amazing culture with a high spirit of accountability. And when you start implementing those levels of accountability, number one, it creates freedom, like Buddy was touching on earlier, that it allows people to know what the expectations are, and then they can run with it. They don't have to be micromanaged. In the same tone, if they aren't the right person, they will weed themselves out, or your team will weed them out. Once your team gets big enough, they will start to come in and say, hey, this guy, this gal, they don't have what it takes. They're not one of us. They need to go. And so that accountability, it creates freedom and it creates identity, and people know what they expect. And it's
interesting
powerful.
that you mention accountability here. I've got two more questions and I'm trying to watch the time. Accountability, if you're going to teach a workshop on something, knowing that people's time is precious, you would think you go into the workshop or choose the topic that is most precious considering the limited amount of time. Is accountability the thing that most businesses need?
And I'll let Nikki talk to this one, but I also have seen, like, business owners want to use accountability. Like, my team just doesn't do what I tell them to do. So they want to pick accountability more often than not, but accountability is huge. I know for Nikki especially.
So yeah, Buddy's our visionary and I'm our taskmaster. And so we have those two hats that we wear, but it goes perfectly together. You need both. And like Buddy said, we do have clients that are like, what is don't like people? And I always say, if you fall in love with your people, everything else falls into place. A profitable business is a byproduct of that. But having the accountability, it's putting in those metrics, putting in, those expectations so they know and then consistently having those meetings, inspecting what you expect. And so having those meetings so that people, they're not surprised if they're not hitting their numbers. They know they're not, they're actually going to report on it. So we help our clients put those meetings in place, build out those agendas, build out the tracking system. And then each individual manager reports on their own information. And it's pretty powerful stuff. And yes, it is a hot topic. And I think right now where people are, the great resignation, people are scared to hold their people accountable.
Oh, that's a good point. Wow, what a good point.
And so that's where the culture, that's where the falling in love with your people comes into place. That's where you have to have that rapport. You have to have that emotional equity in order to have that spirit of accountability. But it's very possible even today.
Well, we get into culture conversations and how to develop that culture, which I've heard we've talked around it. Last question here. And in a very short amount of time, we've covered the topic of beginning a business to developing and growing and getting unstuck to the things needed with the people. I sat with a banker the other day, and you can feel sorry for me about that later, but I sat with a banker the other day, and his comment was this: Cam, there are companies that are heirlooms, and there are companies that are built to sell. And the companies that are heirlooms are built and managed differently. They're built so that the owners can give it to a child, can give it to employees, can transfer it on. And there's one way to build and manage a company that way. The other one is build it to sell, to pocket some profit or move on, whatever it may be. Discuss your coaching around those two different motives of the business owners. Nikki, you're nodding. Let's begin with you.
Well, I just am totally in agreement that there are very different strategies. Being from California originally, we are in that startup mindset, and having moved to the South, which we love living here so much and feel so blessed. But moving here, we've seen so many family businesses.
Oh my gosh,
it's amazing. And some of the folks that we've met through an organization that we're affiliated with, YPO, we've met so many legacy businesses, people that have been, running their families' businesses for 3-4 generations. And our family has been in a cattle operation since 1854, so we can relate to that as well. But it's a very different strategy from your tax structure to, we have a friend who built a big giant business in waste management, but they would run every single expense through the business that they possibly could that was legal, but they never planned on selling the business. So it didn't need to recognize a ton of profit and have high EBITDA so that you get a big, multiplier at the end. Yes. So it's just a different strategy. And we do work with our clients. Buddy's, talked about that 3-year strategy earlier. Tony Robbins says, if you don't have an exit strategy, you have a job, even if you never plan to sell your business. Buddy and I, with the last business, we weren't planning on selling it, and not when we did sell it, but we'd been to a workshop where we identified our number of what it needed to be to retire. And lo and behold, that's exactly to the dollar, the number that we sold that business for. But just getting clear on what your exit strategy is, even if you never plan to sell, just helps you really identify what's important, where your company is going, and what you need to do to get there.
It helps shape the daily strategy. Buddy, go ahead.
Okay, so I have a little bit of a different mindset on it. I think that allowing that, yes, you need to consider your exit strategy. That's critical for every business. But I think when you allow that this isn't going to be your all, your everything, all of a sudden you don't get that full capacity of running a business and grabbing the heart of your team and the attention and where you're going, and you're going to change the life and change the world. If in the back of your mind, like, I don't want to get too close, this really isn't me, I'm probably going to do something else later. All of a sudden that eats away, I truly believe, at your culture. And so I think go all in mentally, go all in mentally, emotionally. Your team's going to respond to that, and they're going to feel like it's more than a job. And I think that that's where success comes from. And so, there's ways to go about that. But I think, yes, tax strategies, play that, but don't let that into your emotional side to run your business.
And you touched on that earlier when you were talking about culture. You have to have a vision that's bigger than just making yourself rich. Okay. People will not follow a visionary who just cares about profit at the end of the day. So you've got to have a vision. Like Buddy said, you can't just be thinking about the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You do have to be all in, and you have to have a compelling vision that creates a future and a hope for your team. And then you have to walk that walk.
How can people find you? I know people are stimulated with this conversation. How do they find you?
Oh, well, you can go to our website, cummingscamp.com. You can also find Buddy it's Buddy at Cummings Camp. You can email us at Nikki, Nikki, at Cummings Camp. We're both really responsive, and we hang out on LinkedIn and Instagram. Nikki Cummings, Buddy Cummings, but really our website, you can email us through there.
And if you come to the podcast of the show, which you can find at what'sworkingcam.com, I'll have links to both of them and their websites in the notes on the podcast. Go to what'sworkingcam.com where you can find them further. Thank you both. This has been fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you for doing such an outstanding job. You represent the community so well. We love listening to you every week, so thank you.
Oh, my Lord. My heart is swollen and my head is swollen at the same time. Cummings Camp Programs, Buddy and Nikki Cummings. Great conversation. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston, brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate, Culver House College of Business, University of Alabama. We'll be right back after this break to sum it up and talk about next week's show.
This is Bill Wasden, labor and employment attorney at Burr and Forman. With offices across Alabama, our attorneys are keenly aware of employment situations in a state with under 3% unemployment. Employers have faced many obstacles over the last 2 years, and new processes and policies must be in place to ensure you're setting clear expectations for your employees. We've created a list of the top 5 legal and operating issues facing employers in 2022 that will, ultimately, ensure your company is prepared for a data breach, the Great Resignation, new presidential executive orders, or potential overtime rule changes. Reach out to me at bwasden@burr.com, that's BURR.com, or my partner Katie Willis, kwillis@burr.com, for this information. Burr attorneys are here to help you with your labor and employment law needs.
No representation is made that the quality of the legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by other lawyers.
They say consistency is the key to success. They weren't wrong. So how about grabbing a beer that's consistently smooth, consistently refreshing, and consistently light? You might just find that the road to success can be pretty enjoyable. Michelob Ultra, the perfect balance of taste and refreshment, and only 2.6 carbs and 95 calories. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Enjoy responsibly. Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
Hey, this is T. Bruce McKinnon. I'm the president and CEO of Elevator World and Bay Business News. And when I'm not traveling the world, looking over elevators or trying to find news for the local business community, I'm listening to What's Working with Cam Marston. Now back to the show.
CummingsCamp.com, CUMMINGS Camp, CAMP.com. That's where you'll find Buddy and Nikki. Their website is full of good content on the work that they do, the clients that they have, their processes. They've got some resources that you can download to determine whether it's appropriate for you. Solid people, good advice, really, really, really invest themselves in your success. I enjoyed meeting them, and as I told you, great content. You're listening to What's Working. We're back. What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate, housed in the Culverhouse College of Business, all housed at the University of Alabama. One of my biggest takeaways, and bear in mind, I'm a small business owner. One of my biggest takeaways was very seldom, and Buddy said this, very seldom does a business continue to do what they got in business to do. You launch a business with an idea of this is what our service to the marketplace, our product will be, whatever it may be. And something comes along and changes that. And there are people, I'm raising my hand, who say, nope, that's not what I do. I'm going to focus on this. This is what I entered the marketplace doing, and I can't waver from that. And opportunity goes right past you. There are people out there who speak passionately of their vision, and they build the vision. There are other people out there that speak passion of owning a business, and they react to the market. And I am of that second camp, and I think the Cummings team, Cummings Camp, is of that second camp too. We raise our hand and we say, what is the opportunity? Not, this is what I'm only ever going to do, but what is the opportunity? And I think that's where that's where I've made some mistakes in the past, being too wed to my dream and not really realistic about the opportunities that have presented themselves to me. Those days are in the past, and it was cemented again. Buddy and Nikki, thank you so much for your time. I told them afterwards, the charisma in their voice and their depth of content makes them a perfect podcast platform to promote their business, even if it's only internally with their customers. Just monthly reminders of what makes small business works from Buddy and Nikki Cummings because of the depth of content and the quality of the delivery. All right, that'll wrap us up. Find us online, Facebook, Twitter, all that kind of stuff. You can find the show at whatsworkingcam.com, where you can email me directly and let me know what more you'd like to hear. Introduce me to perhaps a guest of yours or a guest idea. Always interested in what you think may be interesting out there. I do not go for shameless self-promotion. It needs to be something that everybody could benefit from. So email me, Cam, C-A-M, at cammarston.com. Let me know what you think. Find the show at whatsworkingcam.com. The show is produced by John Thompson with Ion Digital. I'm not sure I've given him the appropriate nod recently. And every time I say that, you've heard me say this before, it's another day that John can't sit out and drink beer on his boat at Horn Island. We'll be back next week with another show. Have a good week, everybody. What's Working is brought to you by the Alabama Center for Real Estate.